We're talking the best college football games, week 5 coming up, the 6 games you need to know up next on Barely Bowl Eligible on KC Sports Network.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into Barely Bowl Eligible. We're Barely Bowl Eligible here with you on Always Draft Season, the channel for, everything you need for draft season. As we have you fixed up here for the college football season. I'm hanging out with Matt Lane as we do this every Friday at noon. We go live. If you're not subscribed, if you're listening to this on the podcast after the fact, appreciate you listening, by the way. But you can join us live every Friday at noon as we preview the college football slate, give you 6 games you got to be watching for in this college football slate this week. But Maddie, how you doing, man?
Listen, I'm doing pretty good. Last week of college football was very enjoyable. Great games. It was a lot of fun to watch. It was rough for me personally. A lot of my rooting interests lost. People may or may not know, I don't root for any particular team per se, but there will be teams going into the week or the games that I'm kind of pulling for. Wasn't a great week for Maddie's heart when it comes to college football. The only thing that I was able to hang my hat on were my Washington schools, both Washington State and Washington, both
True.
Looking good. Those are 2 teams that I'm a little invested in. But besides that, it was a lot of losses for the teams I was pulling for. But, it's a new week. It's a new day. I'm ready for this weekend talk. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm ready for this weekend. Not as good as last, though.
It's a pretty good weekend. And as we're recording this on Friday, there's some really good Friday games going on. Maddie and I were talking about that on this morning of just like the slate of Friday games is wildly impressive.
Banger. I'm glad you said that. My one big thing this week is, hey, we're not going to tell you guys what Friday games to watch, but you should be watching college football tonight because there's great games. The one I got my eye on the most, Louisville at North Carolina State, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't got to really tune into Louisville yet. They're undefeated. They're playing well. My thoughts on North Carolina State are out there. I think they're frauds, but it's still going to be Louisville's toughest competition. And Louisville's flying right now. So this isn't a full breakdown by any stretch, but Jack Plummer transfers into Louisville. Jeff Brom is there. He's coaching them well. And they also got Jamari Thrash, a transfer wide receiver that came in, I believe, from one of the Florida schools. I forget exactly which one where he came from. He's been killing it for them right now. Oh, he came from Georgia State, not a Florida school. Florida Georgia line, though. Close. Jabari Thrash catching the ball from Jack Plummer against North Carolina State's defensive backs. You got Aiden White and you got Shaheem Battle. That's probably the best secondary they're going to go up against all year. Yeah. That's a matchup to keep your eye on tonight. Which one of these Friday games has your attention the most, Tuck?
I think it's super easy to say like the ranked matchup, obviously, with when you talk about Oregon State and Utah. Utah coming off a game where, last week, Maddie, we picked UCLA to kind of to cover and essentially win that game because they were favored in that game. And it's a game, Rice-Eccles Stadium, that shows that you go there, you got to be ready to play the Utes. Got to be ready to play their brand of football. 7-14 is not a score you see very often in the Pac-12, let alone college football. That it's outside of the Big Ten, I should say. Real college football that you see outside of. But a game where I was impressed by Utah. Now, I think on last week's show, we were under the impression that Cam Rising was coming back, but that did not end up happening. So again, with colleges and like their injury reports, it's so iffy. But we didn't see that line movement in favor of Utah as much as probably we would have seen something if Cam Rising would have came back. I believe UCLA was favored by 5.5 or something like that going on the road. And we're taking the home dogs there with Utah. But I think when you talk about Utah, they face another interesting, tough challenge in Oregon State. DJU's got that team going. Now, against Washington State last week, they didn't necessarily have the best performance, but I think that might maybe say more about Washington State than it did about Oregon State, Maddie. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think so. Washington State jumped on Oregon State early. Cam Ward was playing phenomenal. Those wide receivers, Josh Kelly was making, just highlight play after highlight play. So, I think that was more about Washington State. Utah, that offense still looks terrible, right? They won a low-scoring game, and that involved a defensive touchdown. And so, I don't know if I trust Utah's offense yet. I don't believe Cam Rising is going to be back. They have a bye next week. And so I imagine they're probably just going to hold him out through that bye and then have him for the meat of the Pac-12 schedule. So now they're going on the road to Corvallis to play Oregon State. That's going to be a tough battle. I don't know if Oregon State is a team like UCLA that they can just go in there and bully. They kind of bullied UCLA a little bit. Oregon State, I don't think is quite as like talented offensively as UCLA is, but they're bigger. They're stronger. They have a good offensive line. I don't think Jonah Ellis is going to live in the backfield of Oregon State the entire game. So like I would put Utah on major upset alert coming in here, but I also picked against them last week to lose to UCLA. So maybe like everybody else, I'm just here underrating the Utes.
I don't think you can underrate the Utes anymore. I'm on the record of being a big Utes guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big Utes guy, but
they're Iowa in the mountains though. Like, how can I be a big fan? How can I be a big fan of Mountain Iowa? Like, I just can't do it.
They're Iowa in the mountains. That's a good way to put it, truthfully. Yeah. And they do play just a very contrasting style of football compared to all the other teams in their conference. And it works. Like, that's the thing that's so crazy. Like, it works. They've won back-to-back Pac-12 titles, right? Like, they've won the Pac-12 2 years in a row by playing this brand of football. That does help when you have athletes that can do it and everything like that. But guys that can execute that brand of football are very key as well. But Maddie, anything before we move on to this week? I guess we're still technically talking about this week of football, but before we move on to the Saturday slate, we didn't have any additions to the dog rating, did we? I don't think we had any new additions.
We didn't. I want to say Bucky Irvin, running back for Oregon, the little running back that was trucking every Colorado defender and letting them know. He's on the list of watching. Guys I'm watching going forward. Can he do that to non-Colorado defenders? Right?
He's right.
He's a watchdog.
He's a watchdog.
Can he do that to non-Colorado defenders? He might be the first running back. I don't believe we have a running back on there yet. He might be the first running back to make the list. He's just on the radar after that performance against Colorado last week.
Absolutely. Some really impressive stuff from Oregon against Colorado. And I do think it says more about Oregon than it does Colorado, but we can get into that a little bit later because the first game we're going to talk about is the Colorado Buffaloes. It seems like every game that they have, our Buffs, Maddie's rocking the home field apparel. Hey, listen, if you want a little bit of that home field apparel action, go over to homefieldapparel.com. They got all kinds of schools, 150 plus, and they keep adding more. Idaho State, ever heard of them? The Kibby Dome. Want to get some sick Kibby Dome merch? Go to homefieldapparel.com. You can use the code KCSN23, by the way. Get 15% off your first order. We'll help you out there. Help us help you. And you can get 15% off that first order. I got some stuff, man. It's in the mail. I keep checking my the shipping, the tracking every single day to see, okay, where's it at now? Where's it at now? Where's it at now? And it just keeps creeping slower and slower. Yeah.
Y'all love home field so much. It took like 2.5, 3 weeks for me to get my order. Like, it took a minute because y'all are all over home field right now and they appreciate it. We appreciate it, and everything like that. But get in there. You got to get that orders in because it's some of the best stuff. It really is. Any school you want. And it's not just like, hey, here's a school logo on a t-shirt, right? Like, that's cool. That's fine to have one shirt like that. But how many shirts do you need with just the school logo on it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Maddie, show your shirt. This isn't going to be good. Yeah, this isn't going to be good for like audio people. But like, look at that buff shirt.
Look at this buff shirt. Oh,
it's so sick.
Phenomenal.
It's such a great shirt. And you can get any great shirt that you want at homefieldapparel.com. As I mentioned, over 150 plus schools, the vintage designs. That's what I really like. The kids are loving the vintage designs. That's what's in right now. And Home Field Apparel makes vintage designs fresh with all these new shirts. They got a great feeling shirts, Maddie. Like, they're great and comfortable. I'm very excited. I've got a hoodie on the way. This will be my first home field hoodie, and I've heard great things about their hoodies. So I've got a hoodie on the way, and I'm very excited for it.
Oh, I bet I need to get in there. I keep searching, trying to wait for some crew neck sweaters to come through. Big crew neck sweater guy. So I've been trying to wait. I've only heard good things about sweaters too. So like, I need to get back in there. I need to make another. I just got this one. It's time to make another order already. You'll be just as addicted as we are once you get that first order in.
Absolutely. And as Maddie mentioned, it does take they're a little backlogged on some stuff because people been loving the home field apparel stuff. So just got to be patient, but it'll be good. Anything good is worth waiting, Maddie. But this game should be a good one right off the jump. Don't really have to wait long for this one, as at 11 a.m. kickoff Central Time, at noon if you're on the East Coast. Number 8 USC travels to Boulder, Colorado to take on the Colorado Buffaloes, who dropped out of the AP Top 25 rankings after losing to Oregon. Maybe a bit unfair to drop them from 19 all the way out, but that performance Was not a great showing. Was bad. Yes. Maddie, this game will be on Fox. First impressions from this game.
Listen, we've talked a lot about Colorado like everybody else has. I don't want to bore everybody with all the Colorado stuff again. We're still riding with the Buffs. We still like them. We like what they got going on. I think last week was a bit of a wake-up call, though, that there is still quite a talent gap. I mean, there is a significant talent gap. And I think that was not any more evident than Deion Sanders with a game, I think it was 21-0, decides to punt when past midfield on a 4th and medium to Oregon. You knew right then and there that he knew they had no shot to even make it a close game. So he wasn't even going to try. He just didn't want to lose by giving up 70 points like his professional team in his city did, right? That's all he was trying not to do. That lets you know there's a talent gap. I don't know how competitive this week's game is going to be. I think USC is a little bit better matchup for Colorado. They're not as physical as Oregon. They shouldn't be able to just bully Oregon around. But I'm also talking about a team that has Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley and Dorian Singer and Mario Williams. USC is going to put up points. I need our Buffs. I need Colorado's offense to show a little bit, some signs of life. I know losing Travis Hunter hurt. Xavier Weaver got hurt on like the last drive of the game because they still had him in there. Hopefully he's able to play. I need our Buffs to show some life offensively in this game because it's going to be a long season if they get completely, ran out of their home field for a second week in a row here after that Oregon game.
Yeah, that's not going to be great for the old morale. I don't know if you've seen like the celebrity guest list for this game. They got some like LeBron James, Bronny James, obviously Bronny going to USC. They'll probably be in support of USC. I think Will Ferrell's going to be there. You got all kinds of stars from all walks.
They got Matthew McConaughey coming to a non-Texas game.
Right, and Texas plays this weekend. So it's not like Texas is on a bye week. What I think is really interesting too, you talk about Travis Hunter. There's a lot going on around Travis Hunter. With him doing his YouTube video with the kid that hit him a little cheap shot. Really cool to see. I think Travis Hunter is a genuinely good kid, and Deion talked a little bit about that on Friday. But he's lobbying to try to play against USC, and Deion was talking about it in a video and in a text. He said, "I need to play this week. We need to get everything we can so I can get back on the field. I'm not taking no for an answer." Deion replied, "No, you ain't ready. I care about you more than I care about this game. You're going to change the game of football one day when you're healthy and ready. Your future is brighter than mine ever will be and ever was. Relax and get healthy. I love you, son."
Sheesh.
Very high praise from Deion by the way. But he's always maintained that about Travis Hunter being just like an incredible, transcendent athlete. And I think he's right. He will change the game of football. But you love to see that from Travis Hunter wanting to get on the field. This is a huge game, obviously. Like, this is the one when Deion went to Colorado. I think, Maddie, you and I were both like circling like that schedule already of like, okay, that's going to be an interesting game. That's going to be a fun one. But I mean, you mentioned it. There's still a little bit of a gap there. That offensive line is tough. Like, it's not great. Watching back some of the stuff from the Oregon game, they were just getting bullied left and right by Oregon.
Yeah.
And USC has a 21.5 point spread. They're favored by 21.5 points in this game. It's just one of those situations where I don't know. I don't think Colorado is deep enough to deal with USC, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, I would have very low expectations of Colorado being able to win this game. And if they had Travis Hunter healthy and the offense felt like it was still clicking like it was the first couple weeks, I would feel pretty good about them being able to cover because USC's defense is terrible.
Right.
They had their hands full with Arizona State, who was playing like you and I were actively out on the field for Arizona State, and USC still really couldn't get stops. So Colorado should actually be able to put up some points this week. Without Travis Hunter and the fact that teams seem to be getting a little bit of a read on how to attack Colorado's offense, rush 3, rush 4, everyone else goes into coverage, and Shedeur is going to hold the ball and not get it out if somebody's not wide open immediately. And then that offensive line can't hold up. It's scary hours for Colorado. They don't even need to be competitive in this game. They just can't be embarrassed again. As long as they're not embarrassed again, I think everything will be completely fine. If they go out and get blown out by another 40 points again or whatever it was, like that'll be a bad look. The one thing they do have going for it, like Oregon's defensive line just absolutely destroyed Colorado's offensive line. And I don't think USC can't do the same, but outside, Bear Alexander, Solomon Byrd, they have some guys there that definitely have talent. And I'm sure there's a host of other 4 and 5-star athletes along the Trojan Z line, but they don't have guys that are as physical, that are quite as proven as Brandon Dorless or Jordan Birch were for Oregon. They don't have guys that should literally be able to walk the left tackle into the lap of the quarterback in 1 second, every single play. So hopefully we get to see Colorado's offense come out and be a little bit better and maybe force USC's offense to press a little bit. Caleb is not above making some mistakes, trying to get the highlight plays. You don't think Caleb Williams is out here trying to show out in this game against a terrible defense in Colorado's and to get, really submit himself as QB1? There will be opportunities. That offense has to play a little bit better than it did last week to even put the slightest bit of pressure on USC.
I agree, Maddie. Let's go ahead and make a pick on this one. USC minus 21.5. Maddie, you and I have had this conversation before. Like, what do you consider a blowout? Like, what is a blowout? Is a 3-possession? I think for me, it'd be a 3-possession game. Like, if something that's not easily obtainable, 3 possessions, that's tough. What do you constitute as a blowout?
College is different than the NFL.
That's true.
I think teams can get blown out in the first quarter of college football, and it might only be a 2-score game, just the way things work. But you can tell pretty quickly if a team is just not talented enough and not playing at the level they're going to need to that day. So I think, for college football, blowouts can happen a lot earlier. But yeah, I think roughly 3 scores, but more specifically, it's who has the ball. If a team is getting the ball down 3 scores, I don't know if that counts. But if you have to give it away at any point in time down 3 scores, especially in the second half, you're probably being blown out, right? If you're giving the ball away down 3 scores, you're being blown out.
Colorado has failed to cover the spread in hang on, I just lost it. Failed to cover the spread in 7 of its last 8 games against ranked teams at Folsom Field. Not a great stat nugget to lead with, but Maddie, what's your pick in this one?
Man, this is hard. I think this line after initially when Colorado lost to Oregon, I think it was a little bit higher. I think it was like 24 or something like that, 24 and a half. And then USC struggled with Arizona State. And that makes you a little, get a little bit more cautious. We just talked about how USC struggled with Arizona State's offense a little bit. I really want to take the Buffs here and say they keep it close. The problem is every team wants to show out versus Colorado. That's what it is. Look at this. Look at the list of people coming to watch this game. Everybody wants to go. You're going to get Lincoln Riley's best. You're going to get Caleb's best. I'm going to take USC and lay the points, but I don't think it will ever at any point in time look as bad as it did last week versus Oregon for our Buffs.
I think I'm going to take Colorado just because of that defense. I know that they'll want to show out, they'll want to play better, but I don't think they are very good. And that's the hard part for USC. And even in our preview, our conference preview of this, when we talked about the Pac-12, that's the big thing about USC. The big talking point about USC is they're good, but they're only going to be as good as their defense allows them to be. Yeah. And I think that basically, I'm not saying Colorado's going to win this game. I just think that they can not lose by more than 21 points.
Backdoor cover, or are they semi-competitive throughout the whole game?
Oh, I think it's going to be a backdoor cover. I do. I think it's a backdoor cover. I do think that USC will I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think both of these teams do not have a defense. And hold on, I had it right in front of me because I was looking at the over, what the over would be for this game if my computer would load right. 72.5 is the over under for this game. That's a lot of points. I think I anticipate a lot of points being scored in this game, because I think USC is going to have to score a lot of points, obviously, right? But, Maddie, you did mention the offense didn't quite look right for Colorado with Travis Hunter not out there, but still got athletes, still got dudes. Dylan Edwards is a guy that I really like, and they got the Weaver kid. They got was it Joe Horn Jr., Jimmy Horn Jr., not Joe Horn. So they got guys out there, but Maddie, let's take a break. We got to take a break, and then once we get back, we will move on to the afternoon games. We'll tell you what we're watching for coming up next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Welcome back into Barely Bowl eligible here on KC Sports Network. We are giving you the games you need to know, the games you need to watch. We are on to the afternoon slate as at 2:30, 3:30 kickoff. Number 24, Kansas, travels to Austin, Texas.
Ooh.
This is an ABC game. This game's on ABC, Maddie.
That's what the people want.
It is what the people want because Texas has had a bugaboo. Number 3, Texas has had a bugaboo with Kansas in the past. Kansas, much better than in the past. Texas, also much better than in the past. Thoughts on this game?
There's a couple things that immediately come to my mind, right? Last week, I said that Kansas BYU might belong as the sickos game. And I got a little bit of pushback from some people, privately outside the show about that. But guess what? You watch that game, that was a sicko game. That was a sick football game. They belong there, and that's fine. Doesn't mean it wasn't fun. Kansas is good. They're ranked. They deserve to be ranked. They're going to get their real test now. And last year, when we were doing the same song and dance about Kansas being, way better than before, being a real contender, they hosted Texas. And Texas put 31 points on them in the first half to lead 31-0. Ended up winning 55-14 last year. It was the ultimate, hey, well, we're still big brother here. We still own the rest of everything going on. This year, Kansas looks to get a little bit of payback. I know they're a lot healthier this year. I think the defense has a little more talent this year for Kansas, so you're hoping it's a little closer. But man, at the end of the day, Texas still has such a talent gap here. This could be one of those games that Kansas just kind of walked into that buzzsaw again. And you gotta remember that if you're a Kansas fan, Texas is supposed to beat you by 30 points. It doesn't matter if you're undefeated right now. Texas is supposed to beat you by 30 points. You have to keep that in mind going into this one.
I think that's a great point that you bring up about Texas. Texas looked good against Baylor, a team that they were supposed to beat up, and they kind of beat them up a little bit. I'm really impressed by their running backs and kind of the versatility that their offense has kind of shown. Who's the running back? Oh, Jonathan Brooks. He had a pretty good game against Baylor. I thought he looked pretty good. Quinn Ewers showing some good presence at the quarterback position. Obviously, Xavier Worthy seems to be that dude when it comes to wide receivers. So, you guys know that Texas has got some dudes. They're supposed to be good. This is the year for them that they're supposed to be back. This is their back year, right? Like this is everyone talking about it coming in is that this is the year that they're supposed to kind of put some stuff on. And Jalen Ford starts talking defense. Has had like an interception like his last 4 or 5 games or something like that. That's insane. Like at the linebacker position, he's got a nose for the football. He's been playing really well. I know our pal Derek Johnson, big fan of him. I heard him talking on Texas Game Day. I think it's called Texas Game Day. They have like a game day style show just for Texas, though. It's kind of sick that they do on the Longhorn Network. And he was on there talking about Jalen Ford, everything like that. So they got some dudes. Obviously, Kansas's defense, Maddie, as you mentioned, something that I wanted to bring up, has been better this year. It's been better, but it's easy to improve from where they were last year.
Yeah. The biggest difference this year is the defensive line's been a little bit better. Last year, anybody could push around the defensive line. This, Jeremy Robinson's taken a little bit of another step. He's been really good. Austin Booker has come along pretty well for them. And I know they have a couple of defensive tackles that haven't been complete pushovers this year. So Kansas is on the right direction. Texas has one of the most physically dominant offensive lines in college football. Yeah. They didn't push around Alabama, but they definitely gave Alabama everything they could possibly handle. I don't think Kansas's D-line is anywhere close to Alabama. So this is just going to be a game where the physicality might be too much. Even when you flip sides of the ball, Byron Murphy, Baron Sorrell, Devondre Sweat, these are defensive linemen that I think Kansas is going to have a really hard time trying to stay in front of. Good thing for Kansas. Great offensive coaching staff. And what they do on offense is phenomenal. They should they're going to get Jalen Daniels on the move. They're going to have him running around, trying to throw back across the field, use a lot of misdirection. I think that's what they're going to have to do to keep in this game. Because if this becomes a relatively traditional football battle, Texas, I think, just pushes KU around along the trenches for the majority of the game.
Yeah, I think they've got to turn it into a shootout. Because the offense is where the money is made for the Jayhawks, as you mentioned. Colton Nicky is a coordinator who is on the up and up. In terms,
he's got to get a job next, like a head coach job. You got to give him a shot somewhere.
And I think there was conversations about him possibly leaving, and he was in the conversation for some jobs elsewhere, like this offseason. I don't think he got like a huge amount of buzz, but what he's been able to do has been really impressive on the offense side of the ball. I think I saw something too. This might have been from Scott Chasen at the Kansas City Star here locally. I think I saw that Kansas is getting a lot of production from transfer guys on the defensive line. So they've really been able
Yes.
to hit that transfer portal really hard and get some production from those guys out there, which has been a welcome sight for Kansas because they did really need some help on that defensive side of the ball. And as Kent Swanson likes to tell us a lot, they had a lot of guys return from that first year or from that year last year where they had some success for the first time in some time. Had a lot of guys return from that roster, an experienced team. But a Texas team that is favored by 16 points at home. Maddie, I'll start it off. I don't see how Texas doesn't cover.
Yeah. Okay. Here's I watched the BYU game, and Keaton Slovis made some crazy throws against Kansas. Yeah. He was dropping some dimes in there, and he was also throwing the game away. I think Ewers is a better quarterback than Keaton Slovis. I think Ewers is going to be able to throw the ball down the field. I think Texas has significantly better wide receivers than BYU does, so they should be able to win down the field. Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittingham's there. Like, they have so many guys that can catch the ball and do stuff to you. Oh, I didn't even mention their tight end who's vying to be a first-round pick, and Jatavion Sanders, who nobody in college football has been able to cover. I don't think Kansas will. I think there's just too much firepower on this Texas offense that KU will not be able to slow them down. And on the flip side, even during the best KU offensive coaching performance, they have to win every single play schematically, or it's probably a negative play for them, or at least a neutral play, which isn't good for an offense. So I'm going to take Texas to cover too, because their avenues to win and the talent gap are just so superior to what KU has right now.
Kansas has failed to cover the spread in its last 7 games as an underdog. And I was trying to set you up there to kind of help convince me that, you know what, maybe they can cover. You didn't.
I got nothing for you, man. I don't.
It sounds like we're both on the Texas train in terms of that.
I think Texas is good, man. I think Texas is real good. That's the thing.
They're number 3 in the country for a reason. That's not just like a phony ranking throwing out there, but they looked good. They're looking good against Baylor, like a Baylor team they should beat. I rewatched that game, and it was like one of those things where I was like, wow, okay. They look good. Sanders is a guy, you mentioned him. I don't know why it took us so long to start to talk about him, but like a guy that people cannot figure out how to cover. It's one of the things where Brock Bowers was the tight end mentioned, a lot, obviously, for reasons, for as he should be, because he's very good. But Sanders has put him in a conversation up there with Brock Bowers in terms of being drafted high, and rightfully so. When we did our Big 12 preview with Matt Miller, and he was talking about Texas, he was one of the first guys he brought up. And we talk about that receiver room from Texas. They got a lot of talent on it, everything like that. But he was like, yeah, this Sanders dude is a guy that you guys need to be paying attention for. And he was right. So shout out Matt Miller.
No, fully agree. Sanders was like everyone's tight end 2 coming in. I think he's only been better than what everybody thought this year. Not a great blocker or anything like that, but they're going to use him in space. Sanders is great. I think Worthy's great. A.D. Mitchell's great. It's just, again, too much firepower. There's too much firepower on this offense. And if you can't get pressure on them consistently, which I don't know if Kansas's D-line will be able to do, I think Texas will have no issues moving the ball. And then it just becomes how much can KU out coach Texas's defense? That's hard to do for 60 minutes because it's not like Texas has a poorly coached defense anymore. So
let's move on to the night slate game. 6:30 Central kickoff time, 7:30 Eastern. Number 11 Notre Dame travels to Durham, North Carolina to take on the Duke Blue Devils. That game obviously is going to be on NBC because it's Notre Dame and they have exclusivity, it seems like, with NBC. I don't know if that's going to be a thing anymore with all the TV contracts going around, but would be surprised if it wasn't. Maddie, first thoughts on Notre Dame, number 11 Notre Dame versus number 17 Duke.
Is there odds on if Notre Dame has a play with 10 men on the field?
And I'm sure it would be minus 2,000 if there were, because they seem to run that every single week.
I also have a little bit of news. I think Notre Dame Duke is also on ABC. I don't know if it's showing on NBC too, but I think it's also an ABC game according to
Oh,
local TV listing here, because I think maybe because it's in Duke at in Raleigh. I don't know.
could be.
I don't know the
I'll do
rules.
some research. I'll do a little
Yeah,
bit
I don't
more
know the
research.
rules on that. It should be a fun game. I think Duke's a little better than what they get credit for. I think people forgot that they beat Clemson in week 1 because they haven't really had a super tough matchup since then. People have kind of swept that under the rug as, oh, maybe Clemson's either A, not good. See, they lost to Florida State too, or B, not a lucky game, but Duke just kind of survived and got through that game. And this Duke team's good. This Duke team doesn't shoot themselves in the foot. They just execute, right? They're going to go out defensively. They're going to make you drive 75 yards to score points every single drive. They're not giving up explosive plays. You are going to get 5, 6 first downs to go put up points against them every single drive. And eventually, teams make mistakes. Eventually, teams don't do what they need to do. And then offensively, Duke has so much different stuff going on. They have like 5 guys named Jordan or Jalen that play running back or wide receiver. They're in motion. They line up everywhere on the field. Oh, and then once you finally get a little stuck on these Jalen Jordan guys running around everywhere, Riley Leonard takes off and runs, or Riley Leonard makes a great pass down the field. It's like they're a difficult team to prepare for because you're not going to hit explosives on them, and you're going to have a hard time trying to get a read on what they're doing offensively. They won't shoot themselves in the foot. Like it's a tough team to play going into Raleigh, who I don't think has had, or Durham. I don't think they have had a college game days there, right? I believe
College game day. Yeah, that's why it's on ABC. Is college game days there. Mm-hmm.
I don't believe they've had that happen there in a while. So it's fun.
First time ever.
Oh
yeah! I just so happen to have the College Game Day website in front of me, so that's how I know. But yes,
shoo. Yeah, fun.
Big game. It is a really big game for these guys, and Notre Dame coming off a game that they should have absolutely won against Ohio State.
Oh my gosh!
Should have absolutely won that game. Maddie, do I say it? Do you think I say it? Do you think?
Yes.
Is this the podcast for me to say this on?
Yeah, you got to let it go at this point in time.
I think Ohio State are frauds. I don't think that's a good football team. I know Ryan Day. I almost said Jason Day. That's a golfer. Ryan Day's like whole post game rant was weird to me. Like what Lou Holtz said wasn't wrong about that team. They won because the other team had 10 guys on the field twice in a row on the goal line. Then he's like, we are so good at this. Like, no, you're going to get boat raced by Michigan. It's not going to be close. Michigan is a far superior team than them. But anything can happen in those games. I don't know. I'm not certainly sold. Like that didn't sour me on Notre Dame that game. I think if anything, I don't know. That game was so weird the way it ended. It was so unsatisfying, Maddie. I don't know about you. It was just one of those things where it's like, it's got to end that way. Like that's the way it's got to end. It's like those videos you see on TikTok or on Twitter of like the unsatisfying. It was like the can getting stuck in the vending machine type of deal. It's like, oh man, it's got to end that way. But no, I do think that this is a big game, obviously, for Duke. I think Duke is turning into a really good football program there. Obviously, the win over Clemson, I was impressed by. I think both of us thought that game was going to be close. I went back and listened to our picks. We both picked Clemson in week 1 because we weren't really sure what to expect from A, Clemson, and B, Duke. And right. Duke came out and kind of asserted some dominance on there. Like they beat them by a it was not in question at the end of it. And to have the fans already on the sidelines, I don't know, you remember that? Already on the sidelines, ready to storm the field. They were already out of the stands on the sidelines, waiting for that clock to hit 0. So funny. But I do think that this game is a wildly interesting one. I understand why College Game Day is there, right? 5.5 point favorite for Notre Dame. Might be a little bit disrespectful to Duke, but Notre Dame's offense, when it's running, when it's humming, has looked very good this season. So I do understand why Notre Dame is the favorite team. I thought it would be a little closer to like 3.5 maybe.
Yeah, I think it should be too. Notre Dame's got a couple injuries at wide receiver, and they're not. And it's not like they threw the ball well versus Ohio State. And I'm not saying that Duke is Ohio State, but that defense has been playing really well, especially in the secondary. Like Al Blades is a transfer from Miami. He's been great for them, right? The whole secondary has been solid and great. So I think Notre Dame's going to have trouble throwing the ball I don't know if Duke will necessarily get pressure against that Notre Dame offensive line and Sam Hartman. I just think they're going to have struggle to throw the ball and guys to get open. So they're going to have to rely entirely on the run game. And that's what Duke wants you to do. Duke wants you to try to run the ball, again, 75 yards down the field, picking up 5, 6, 7 first downs to score. Notre Dame's offense kind of plays into what Duke's defense wants you to do. On the flip side, what's Duke's offense going to be able to do? We just saw Ohio State struggle for a long time to score, and they really kind of only scored twice on some big plays. A long completion down to the goal line to Buka to set up the game-winning touchdown, and a Travion Henderson long touchdown run. Outside that, Notre Dame's defense didn't really budge. So what can Duke do to move the ball? That's going to be interesting to watch. I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste is a transfer defensive end from Ohio State to Notre Dame. He was excellent versus Ohio State. That's probably the best I've seen him look. Like that was he looked better there than he ever did at Ohio State, in my opinion. I think everybody kind of saw him, play really good in that game. He'll be matched up hopefully a lot against Graham Barton, the offensive tackle at Duke. I think Barton probably kicks inside at the NFL level, but he's a Peter Skoronski type player, not as good, but type player, just very technically sound, good athlete, good technique, good strength, that's playing out at left tackle for Duke, has a lot of experience. He's never going to be mismatched. He's never going to be overwhelmed, but can a guy that's clearly more athletically gifted give him some trouble? I think that could spell a lot of issues for Duke if that's the case.
I agree. Let's get into the picks, Maddie. As I mentioned, Notre Dame favored by 5.5, and Notre Dame has covered the spread in each of its last 9 games against opponents from the ACC. I think that this is a game where Notre Dame will show a little bit more of what Notre Dame is, right? Like coming off of a game like that, it's embarrassing to lose the way that they did, right? Giving up a walk-off touchdown when you only had 10 guys on the field. I think that's tough. This is an opportunity to beat a ranked opponent in their house. They're not going to take them lightly, obviously. It's 5.5. I'm changing my pick live on the spot because if it was 3.5, 2.5, maybe I would have taken Notre Dame because I think winning by a field goal is realistic. This Duke team, man, they're a chippy bunch, a scrappy bunch. I'm taking Duke. I even had Notre Dame written down on my sheet, and I convinced myself in the midst of that I wanted to take Duke.
Man, I'm contemplating going to this game. It's not that far away from me. Quick, easy drive. Contemplating going to it. Still plenty of tickets available for me. So I'm already on Duke's side. I want Duke to win this game. Last week, I wanted Notre Dame to beat Ohio State. I then switched my pick to Notre Dame because we got the hook on the extra field goal there for them. I was going to pick against them last week, but I wanted them to win. This week, I want them to lose. I want Notre Dame to lose, but I think I'm going to pick them to win. I'm picking them to cover. Mostly because you switched your pick live. I want to go against you so we don't have all the same picks. I was going to go with Duke, and then when you switched it, I'll switch it too. I do think it's a time where Notre Dame, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. Not because they lost to Ohio State. I would say this could be a letdown game for Notre Dame, except for the fact that they literally gave the game away by not putting another player out there. They're going to be ready for everything. I think you get kind of a Notre Dame physical domination kind of game here.
So those are our watch schedule for this week. We got some wild card games too. If you got the second TV, second monitor, throw that sucker up there at the 5 o'clock hour at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Central Time, or 6 p.m. Eastern Time, excuse me. Oxford, Mississippi is going to be having a banger as number 13 LSU is going to travel to Ole Miss, an Ole Miss team. Maddie, they got their swagger back? Does Ole Miss have their swagger back?
No, they look terrible versus Alabama. It was bad. Lane did a lot of talking. I love Lane Kiffin. He did a lot of talking. Yes. You're going to talk that much. You got to provide something, right? Like you look at Colorado and the players talked a lot. Deion didn't really ever say anything about them going to go in there and beating Oregon. He didn't say a word about it. Lane did a lot of smack talk himself to put up 10 points on Bama, essentially get shut out after like the first quarter and a couple drives into the second quarter. I don't think this Ole Miss offensive line can block. I think all of their good skill positions are a little banged up right now. They're all their top wide receivers are out. They finally are getting back Zachary Franklin, Caden Prescorn. He's a tight end. These are transfers in that they had a lot of hopes for. So they're finally getting healthy. I just don't know if they're going to put it together immediately right now. I guess if you want to make, if Ole Miss wants to have hope, it's Lane Kiffin dialing up shots, this now getting slightly healthier wide receiver group against an LSU secondary that's pretty piss poor. I mean, look at them versus Arkansas last week. There is a pathway to Ole Miss to win, but I also, like I said, I think Texas is good. I think LSU is pretty good too. I think LSU is figuring out what they need to do offensively. They obviously didn't, like last year, they had no clue in that game home opener against Florida State, that first game of the year. As the year goes on, I expect their offense to get a little bit better and better each week. Malik Neighbors is on a tear right now. I don't know if Ole Miss has their swagger back, but it's at least an interesting matchup for their offense if they're getting healthy.
I'm curious too, Matty, because I've kind of in my big dumb brain, I've kind of written off LSU after the Florida State thumping that they took. I was like, oh, well, not as good as I thought they were going to be. They do beat Mississippi State, which is a team in some flux right now. The Arkansas game, I think Arkansas fans will say, look, hey, maybe Arkansas is better than what we said. It was a close game with LSU. I think that game personally says more about LSU than it does about Arkansas. That could be some bias for me. But I think that this game is a really interesting matchup when you just talk about this is SEC East, baby. This is old SEC football right here. Lane Kiffin, Brian Kelly. This is the name. These are the brands going at it that you want to see going at it. They got a night game out of the deal too, so I think that's a evening game, I should say, 5 p.m. Central Time. But it's gonna be one of those matchups, especially you talk about Malik Neighbors, a guy who, buddy, if he falls to the Chiefs go up and that'd be fun to see him with Patrick Mahomes. Is what
we have a long conversation to have about wide receivers later this year because there's a lot of wide receivers playing really good ball.
There are
that are fighting for wide receiver 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 in
this
draft class.
Sorry, Matty, to interrupt, but I want to still talk about receivers because Malik Neighbors, deservedly so, does need to be talked about. Is this wide receiver class? Where would you put it? Because recently, I think we've seen a lot of deeper wide receiver classes.
Yeah.
Where would you rank it in like the last 5 years? Let's say the last 5 years in terms of classes. Would you say it's 2, 3?
It's got to be up there, right? So, I mean, I started this way. They have the best wide receiver prospect from the past 5, whatever draft class you want to say, going back to Calvin, right? They have the single best prospect there in Marvin Harrison Jr. And then you start to fill out the depth. And there's been some really good wide receiver classes of late. Obviously, Justin Jefferson weights his draft class a ton because he wasn't even the first guy off, but he's clearly the best wide receiver in the NFL. But coming out as a prospect, he was a round 1 guy, but he wasn't Justin Jefferson as we know him now coming out. So you can't double count him, right? I think the draft class is competing for one. I think it's there. I think it's competing for one. I got to see Keon Coleman get a little bit more consistent. Right. I need to see Malik Neighbors in his next big game play like he has since that Florida State game, right? He wasn't that great in the Florida State game. I think a lot of that was Jaden Daniels' struggles, but he still wasn't great himself. I need to see him better. I need to see Roma Dunes go up against a defense that matters, and Washington doesn't play Utah till I think late or at all. I don't know. I don't know if he's even going to go up against a secondary that's, excellent, but there's options. There's guys out there. I think we have enough season that if you get to the end of this year and tell me this wide receiver class is the best that we've had in a half decade, I'm not going to fight you on it. I don't think.
There's some dudes we've had conversations in the KCSN Discord kind of about just like wide receivers, what you would do.
Yeah.
Trade. Would you trade up potentially to get a wide receiver in this class? I don't know, because there's going to be a lot of them. Maybe you could get a quality guy at where the Chiefs hope to be picking at 32. But that game, Utah at Washington. Utah goes to Washington, and that is on November 11th. So a little bit later in the year. And that game will be one certainly to watch. But LSU is. I think LSU is good, but it's going to be the defensive side of the ball. Again, a game where it's probably going to be a lot of points. Wouldn't you say, Maddie? You think there's going to be a lot of points in this game?
So, okay, I'm going to spoil it all here. All to go. I'm taking LSU minus the 2.5 because I don't think that's enough for LSU. And here's why. Yeah. I do think it should be a high scoring game, but I watch Ole Miss's offensive line not be able to block anybody that's at all. True. And you watch Alabama. Alabama's a great defensive front, great defensive football team. I get it, but you don't think that LSU sitting there watching Dallas Turner completely take over that game and shut down everything Ole Miss wanted to do. You don't think Harold Perkins is sitting there watching that? You don't think Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith, who's finally kind of getting back and able to play again, you don't think this LSU defensive front that is, phenomenal in their own right, are sitting there chomping at the bit to get after this Ole Miss offensive line that Tulane dominated? Tulane, good group of 5 defensive line, but they dominated Ole Miss's O-line. I think LSU can do the same. There could be points. Like I said, versus Kansas, versus Texas, it'll be all on Lane Kiffin's back because I don't think Ole Miss can block LSU. So give me LSU laying the 2.5 for that particular reason.
Yeah, 2.5 is an interesting line on this one. Home team has covered the spread in 9 of the last 10 games between LSU and Ole Miss. I'm not sure that really, as this game is in Oxford, I'm not sure that really applies here, truthfully, because all the examples that you laid out, Maddie, have this Ole Miss offense is not the Ole Miss offense that we've been used to seeing in the Lane Kiffin era.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who's the wide receiver that is like really good from Ole Miss. I got to pull up I can't think of his name
right now. Trey Harris.
Trey Harris. Yeah, that's right.
He's been hurt like in and out of the lineup and
yes.
stuff. Yeah.
And that's, again, another wide receiver. But I think I saw a couple of times they tried to go to him in that Alabama game, and they just didn't look. They just look not right. It just looks out of sync. And I think it is, going back to what you were saying about the offensive line, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think it's throwing a lot of things out of timing. But let's get into the second wild card game here. South Carolina traveling to Knoxville, Tennessee against number 21, the Tennessee Volunteers. Did I say 1? That's wild. Number 21, the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee favored by 12 points at home, 6:30, 7:30. Kickoff time on the SEC network. Maddie, first thoughts on this one?
What is going on with this line is my first thoughts. Like, what are we doing here? Like, did Hendon Hooker come back and I didn't realize it? And Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman? Like, what is going on here? You unleashed a take earlier about Ohio State. I'm ready to unleash an irrational take here. Spencer Rattler, QB3 in this draft class. Spencer Rattler, the way he is playing ball, the last 3 games last year, which includes against Tennessee, against Clemson, against Notre Dame, and then what he has done this year, this looks like the kid back in 2020 that everybody was hyping up as a potential number 1 overall pick. He seems more mature, both on the field. I don't know him off the field, but you don't hear anything about him off the field anymore. We're a long day past, was it the QB youth or whatever the QB thing was that got all the attention from Netflix series or whatever, right? We're past that. I think he's grown up, and I think he has a balling out right now. Tennessee's defense, very good at rushing the passer. South Carolina can't block anybody, but guess what? That hasn't bothered Spencer Rattler all year. Georgia didn't bother him. Nobody they've played has bothered him. What he's had, what he's been trying to do this year. I think he torched for 6 touchdowns, like 450 yards. He torched Tennessee's defense last year. Mm-hmm. I understand game script and whatnot, but Mississippi State, North Carolina, Georgia, none of these defenses rattled him. I don't think Tennessee's going to either. Like, that line is wild to me, and I think Spencer Rattler's kind of the reason why.
Yeah, it is. I thought you were going to go the other way and say Tennessee's not actually good, and the offense that the Tennessee Volunteers run is not sustainable.
So how about you have me playing quarterback? Like, a guy that can't hit the broadside of a barn for half of his throws.
I think it's really interesting when you talk about Josh Heupel's offense, and I was researching about moving the hash marks in college football. People have been talking about moving the hash marks in from the wide hash marks. And that's been kind of a lot of coaches have been wanting that. And the one coach that doesn't is Josh Heupel, because he likes the wide hash marks, because if he's on one side of the hash marks, he'll throw his wide receivers on the complete other side, like on the opposite sideline. And they're so far away, it's easier to see what coverage that they're in. And it's easier to like kind of make the defense show what they're going to do coverage wise. And that is just like not a sustainable offense when it comes to like the NFL, right? And Maddie, we've had this conversation a lot with like Grady, like trying to analyze people who come wide receivers specifically, and maybe even quarterbacks that come out of Tennessee. And it's like that offense is like tough to kind of grade because of, and they just throw deep balls all the time. They're just throwing deep. If you look at Jalen Hyatt's tape from last year, it's just all of it is deep balls. It's like stuff you're doing on Madden, calling hot routes and just lobbing it up right there. But to this year's team. I agree with you. It is very interesting that I understand Tennessee does have like a home field advantage, right? Like that's neat. That's cool. 12 points though is kind of wild for a South Carolina team that's been scrappy this year. Obviously not ranked, but a team that has hung in there in some games. Lost a tough one to North Carolina squad, but has been in there. Like I don't know, and you even mentioned it. Spencer Rattler been playing very well this year. I can kind of assume what your pick is going to be based off of what you've already said, but and I think I'm right there with you. I'm not sold on Tennessee. I think it's more me not being sold on Tennessee than anything.
But it's a combo. Like Tennessee's offense clearly isn't working as well with Milton versus Hendon Hooker. So like you don't have blind faith that they're going to walk into any game and put up 40, right? And then you combine that with the fact that like I think Spencer Rattler's playing great. Xavier Leggett, a 225-pound, 6'3" wide receiver, is also apparently the fastest player in all of college football. Like, he hit like 22.5 miles an hour last week at that size. Like this dude's like DK Metcalf-esque playing at South Carolina with Rattler right now. Like whether they win or lose, their offensive line could be an Achilles heel that is exploited by Tennessee, right? And they could very well lose the game. It's just hard for me to see them getting completely blown out by a Tennessee team that has done nothing but, failed to impress me this year.
Absolutely. Both of us taking South Carolina minus 12. That's a lot of points. A lot of points to be laying right there to a chippy South Carolina team. All right, let's get into our Sickos game of the week. Hats up to the Sickos committee out there on Twitter. This game is an SEC game. You don't typically see SEC games as Sicko games, but this one certainly is, as Texas A&M goes to Arkansas. And Texas A&M dealing with an injury to their quarterback. I think he's out for the year now. I said that to you earlier in the group chat. Texas A&M, man, is just had some bad luck since having that number 1 overall recruiting class. Texas A&M favored by 6 points. This game is on the SEC network as well. So hey, look, if you are watching, they're at the same time. South Carolina and Tennessee is at the same time of Arkansas and Texas A&M. Probably a good thing, as we look there. But Texas A&M at Arkansas, Maddie. Just quick thoughts on this one.
It's gonna be a weird game. It's Arkansas and it's Texas A&M. I believe this is the game that is played in Jerry World. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I feel like it is, which is wild, which is crazy. This game is never going to be normal, and it's already starting off with a backup quarterback that's left-handed. Arkansas just took LSU to the brink, and I think Arkansas is really bad. Like, I don't think their offensive line is very good. I don't think their secondary is terrible. Texas A&M has talent. Evan Stewart, stud, underclassman wide receiver. Okay. Anaya Smith is healthy again. Good athlete. The issue for Texas A&M is never talent. It's just which Texas A&M are you going to get that day? Give me Texas A&M laying the points. I think Arkansas is up for a little letdown after last week. I don't trust that offense or defense to compete. But you want to tell me Arkansas wins this game 37-6 because of Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Jerry World? Sure, why not?
This game is so weird. Already starting with the backup quarterback, as you mentioned. This Connor Wegman is out for the season. Yeah, shoulder, I believe, which is never good. So Max Johnson, the senior transfer from, I believe, LSU. Yeah, from LSU.
Yes, he was at LSU. The last time he played Arkansas and KJ Jefferson was still there, he got benched for Garrett Nussmeier, and LSU lost the game.
They have a weird. We've had this conversation before off air, Matty. Their quarterback room is so weird at Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, LSU, and Ole Miss all have the craziest QB rooms that are. And I'm pretty sure they all have LSU. One point in time, LSU quarter. It's wild.
It is kind of crazy. I'm with you. I'm not gonna take Arkansas this game. I told you. I think I said more. I told you that the LSU game said more about LSU than it did Arkansas. I don't think Arkansas is very good. I also don't think Texas A&M is very good either. So that's. But I also don't think
Texas A&M's bad. That's the thing. Right, I don't think Texas A&M's good, but I don't think they're bad. I just think they're Texas A&M. They have their own special place in college football to where they have as much talent any given game as anyone they're going to play. The problem is half of them are not playing to that level. I don't know how to explain Texas A&M.
So weird.
I can't do it.
It is. You don't try to explain Texas A&M. You just have to let it happen. It is so weird because I just think that their talent's they're just gonna out talent them. Essentially, is what it's gonna come down to. It's gonna be a high school football game, where just
And
you
we
just have
say
more
that, but then
talent.
they got blown out by Miami, right? So that's what I'm saying.
This
It's
is
like, I don't understand. They have so much talent, but then they can get blown out against any semi-competent team they play any given week. That's what makes them so great for college football.
Are they just a high school all-star team?
Potentially. Some are saying that Texas IMG.
I mean, when you look at it, like they always get good recruits.
Yeah.
They never do anything. Like they
That oil money.
They do get that oil money. Not too shabby. Johnny Manziel changed that. I almost said franchise, but changed that program to now have expectations there. Jimbo Fisher, if he loses this game, he's got to be like.
They can't. They owe him so much money.
All right, before we go, I got to look up the buyout. I got to look up the Jimbo Fisher buyout
I
live.
think after next year, it's finally maybe doable, but like you still have to pony up, right? So like,
oh my goodness, is that seven? Am I reading this
77?
correctly?
It's 77 million, I think, if it's like before the end of this year. Next year, okay, next year it looks like it drops to 67. This thing stays high forever. Oh my god!
What? 94. He got paid. Okay, sorry. His contract was 10 years, essentially 95 million. He's fully guaranteed.
That's the buyout problem.
Fully guaranteed.
That's the issue.
Holy
right?
cow.
Like they need something crazy to happen at that school to get out from Jimbo. They need a reason. I don't want this to actually happen, but they need like a scandal for Jimbo Fisher to get out of there.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because it's insane. And like the problem is, again, the talent's so good. Every other year he's going to whack up and beat Bama and then get you to complete. And then the next year he's going to finish and barely make a bowl game or not even make a bowl game, but he'll have beat Bama. And like when you can reliably say he can contend or beat Bama, that is enough to, I guess, justify not paying $70 million to fire him.
Dude, this is insane. Looking at, I haven't really looked at his contract that deeply, obviously, because I don't think about Jimbo Fisher all that much, admittedly. As one shouldn't think about Jimbo Fisher all that much.
As a big Jameis guy, I'm surprised.
That's true. I'm a big Jameis guy, but I do think about the one story where he thought that he could just dress out and like Jimbo Fisher would remember that he suspended him for a game. And he's just like, oh, I'll just dress out and start warming up.
Jameis has the best stories.
It's so good. No, it's crazy. Looking at his buyout next year in 2024, it goes to 67, which goes down from 76 this year.
It essentially goes down 10 million or like 9 million every year, but like it's fully guaranteed. Like it's just you got to get like 3 more years in there before you feel comfortable saying, okay, we can fire him, pay the money, and then also hire another coach. That's good because we want to compete. The whole point to get rid of Jimbo is you want to compete, and he's not competing. You're going to pony up another huge contract after paying that? Shoo.
I get it though, because like continuity is so important in like college football, right? And like having consistency in things, and like so having coaching turnover will set your program back like 3-4 years. In Missouri's case, it happened like 10 years. It set that program back 10 years, but Gary Pinkel retiring. But at some point, man, you gotta cut bait. You gotta vacate the premises. But all right, Maddie, that's gonna do it for Barely Bowl Eligible. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Everybody listening to this after the fact, getting you ready for all the college football that you need to watch on Saturday before the Kansas City Chiefs play on Sunday Night Football. Weekend full of football. Always have to have a weekend full of football. Maddie, final thoughts.
Good thing Texas A&M also has Bobby Petrino on board.
Oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, that team, dude.
How do you feel about that?
I totally forgot. He was going to take the UNLV offensive coordinator position, and he did. And then he said, wait, never mind. I'm going to Texas A&M.
Oh, no. Hold on. It gets worse. I don't know if you know this. DJ Durkin is also the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M.
What are they doing, dude?
If you don't know who DJ Durkin is, I don't need to explain it. You can just go Google DJ Durkin and look through his past in college football coaching. That's what Texas A&M's got going on. That's my final thoughts.
Too much to handle. We appreciate you guys listening all the way to the end of the podcast. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Barely Bowl eligible show. We'll appreciate you. We'll be live next Friday at noon talking week 6 football. College ball is the best time of the year. We are in the thick of it. We are in the absolute thick of it. Make sure to check out our friends at homefieldapparel.com. Use the code KCSN23 for 15% off your first order. For Matt Lane, I'm Tucker Franklin. We'll talk to you guys next week.